My coworker called in sick, but I swear I saw him at a crime scene on the news. So this happened last week, and I still can't stop thinking about it. I work at this small office and we're a pretty tight-knit group, so when someone calls in sick, it's usually not a big deal. But my coworker, Mark, called in on Thursday with this over-the-top dramatic voice saying he had the flu and could barely move. I wished him well and moved on with my day. That night, I was eating dinner and half watching the local news when something caught my attention. They were covering a robbery at a gas station a few miles from my place. The footage was grainy, but they showed this dude in a hoodie and mask sprinting out the store. He was tall and had the same build as Mark, and the kicker? He had this distinct limp. Mark had twisted his ankle the week before. At first, I laughed it off. I mean, what are the odds, right? But then they interviewed a witness who said the guy drove off in a silver car. Mark drives a silver Honda. I started feeling that weird mix of disbelief and, oh crap, is this real? The next day, Mark comes into work, walking perfectly fine by the way. I casually asked how he was feeling and he goes, oh, way better, just needed some rest. But here's the thing, he was weirdly specific about what he did while he was sick. Like, oh, I just laid on the couch, watched some Netflix, drank Gatorade, nothing exciting. Now, I don't want to say anything because what do you even say? Hey, did you rob a gas station? But I swear, every time I catch him glancing at me, it's like he knows I know. The kicker, yesterday someone brought donuts to the office and Mark joked, if I ever rob a store, it'd be for these. Everyone laughed, but I couldn't even look at him. I'm not saying he did it, but I'm not saying he didn't. Mark knows you know, and he's going to end you very soon. In all seriousness, the limp kinda clears him for me. If you have a pain so bad that you have to limp while robbing a bank, then it can't be totally fine the next day. But that could be all part of his ruse. I'm dating a girl with terminal cancer and I'm not a good guy. Throwaway account, obviously. I, 32M, met her, 31F, in a pub. We started chatting and dated quite quickly. Eventually, she told me she was wearing a wig and has ovarian cancer and was undergoing treatment. Well, the cancer has pretty much spread, and she's pretty much in palliative care and we are dating. Now, everyone is always telling me I'm a brave man, a great man, that I was a gentleman for sticking with her without prejudice, and I feel really bad because the truth is I'm only with her because she's super hot. The bold thing doesn't really matter during sex, and with all the treatments and stuff, all we do is have sex, and then she sleeps while I do other stuff. I don't even have feelings for her, but she is eventually going to die, so it's not like I'm going to have to ditch her, and so far I'm having amazing sex. Please just judge me, because I'm tired of being an asshole and being clamoured for it. Outside Secretary leaves a nice comment and says, this is a part of your life in the end of hers. Act accordingly. And remember, this end part of her life could go on for potentially years, and not be as short as you think. Just because she's dying doesn't mean you can't be open with her. I don't really feel like judging OP. I'm a bit torn on my perspective with this. Let me know what you think in the comments. I lie to my boyfriend basically every day, and have done for a while now. My boyfriend and I have been together for over a year now. I love him dearly. I have since the moment we started talking. He is the love of my life, and I can't wait to keep enjoying his presence for as long as I breathe. Now, where does the lie come in? Essentially, my boyfriend is currently in recovery from anorexia, and he's been doing brilliantly. I'm forever proud of him. However, he also has emetophobia, the fear of vomiting and being ill, so most days he gets in his head about feeling unwell and convinces himself that if he eats, he'll be sick, so he defaults to going without. Around a year ago, on a particularly bad day when he'd gone 2 or 3 days without eating a single thing, I was crying, trying to get him to eat. He said he couldn't because he was sure he'd be sick. In that moment, I randomly said, open your mouth and say, ah. He asked why. And I told him you can physically tell if someone is going to be sick because the uvula raises completely to avoid getting any acid residue from the stomach. It's like a warning system for the body to anticipate throwing up. And this worked. This lie I made up on the spot has worked wonders every day since then. I have no idea if what I said is even remotely true. After all, I did make it up. But if it is, great. If not, then still great, because it helps. My boyfriend is now well into recovery and has been for a while. And I don't mean this in any way to take credit away from this amazing man whom I love so much. But I honestly don't know where he would be without this little white lie. It instantly calms him down and allows him to eat without worrying too much about being sick. He now eats 3 meals a day with me, and this small lie has played a big part in that. I've never told him the truth, and I probably never will. I'm just glad it's had the intended effect. Definitely never tell him the truth, but also make sure you're there whenever he feels sick, just in case he decides to use a mirror. I do literally nothing at work for 7 months now, and nobody has noticed. My day is pretty boring. I get to work, I open my PC, and I stare at my screen for 8 hours straight. Most days I have absolutely nothing to do, and the days there's some work, it takes at most a couple hours of my time. I work in an open space, but nobody has noticed, so I guess I'm really good at looking busy. My bosses respect me and even thank me for my work. I don't know how long I'll be able to keep going, but I'm going to exploit the situation the best I can. It's also my first job and an entry role without much room for progress. This guy leaves a good comment empathising with the story. I had a job like that for about 8 years. I was a designer at a very small agency, and for the most part, I only needed to perform on 1 day each week. Most of the time, I just needed to be there in case something happened. It was an awesome job, and I made great use of my free time there. I read many books, learned to code, did freelance work, and eventually learned enough to get much better jobs after that. My current job also blesses me with some free time, like a couple hours every day if I'm smart enough, which I use to work on a side gig which gives me a nice passive income now. Don't waste this time staring at the screen. There are plenty of things you can do with a computer, internet access, and free time. Use it. You won't regret it. I started to use heroin to cope with becoming a single parent overnight. I had a pretty free life. Mid-30s, bachelor, made good money, lots of free time, etc. Then, my younger brother died after running a red light and crashed into a tanker 2 years ago. He had 6 and 8-year-old boys. The mum isn't involved. I'm the only person with my shit together, and obviously I didn't want my nephews going into foster care. They were really excited to move in with the cool uncle who spoiled them. I have done a good job. My nephews aren't f***ed up. I've poured my life into them. I went from a spotless house to a house filled with Legos, shoes, shirts, balls, etc. They are very attached to me and want to go everywhere with me because if you die, then I want to go with you. Yeesh. I've spent $1,000 a month between their private school, extracurricular activities, and other student help. I'd also never even gotten sick until I took them in. But I've never complained. I always looked on the bright side of things. Before, I did drugs occasionally. I stopped after taking the boys in, but I needed something for me. This happened after people in my family started to dump their issues on me instead of asking me if they needed help. I feel so horrible. The heroin felt good for a bit, but I feel so guilty. I need help with these kids, but I'm all they have. Going straight for heroin as a drug to get some me time seems a bit extreme. Maybe get a PlayStation, or just take up a hobby. A lot of people in the comments are saying use weed gummies, which, still not great, but it's not heroin. I regret hating my disabled older brother after he passed. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. So, for context, my older brother was disabled. He couldn't drive, read, write, and he has the brain age of a 6-year-old at 33. When I was younger, he would abuse me, physically, verbally, and had constantly attempted to rape me. I was told to keep quiet about these instances because my parents didn't want to look irresponsible. I understand that it isn't their fault, but I think they've raised a monster. Whenever my brother got the chance, which was almost every day, he'd spit, kick, or hit me, fully knowing that it's harmful to me, as he's bigger and stronger than me. I had tried to talk him through this, but since, my parents have told me that he can't help himself or it's his condition causing these issues. I've occasionally caught him trying to watch me shower too, which is another thing he's done to harass me. He'd constantly turn my mother against me, blaming me for things I didn't do. I wanted him to disappear in any way possible. Last year, I'd mopped the stairs and forgot to warn my brother not to walk down them yet. Later, my older brother slipped and nearly died due to a brain injury from the fall. I hate to admit it, but at the time I didn't care that he almost died. After this incident, he became bedbound. He couldn't speak or walk anymore. I was by his bedside every day, bathing him when he needed me to and preparing his feeding tube. I hated him more than ever. After all he did, why do I have to take care of my abuser? I thought it was okay to hate him because he'd just get better. Unfortunately, there were some serious complications from the fall and he died in October. I hate myself for this more and more every day. My mother has refused to talk to me about it. She 100% blames me since I wasn't invited to the service. Since this happened, I haven't felt anything but remorse. I'm trying to find ways to forgive him and myself. In the comments, the 8th loser gives a nice response to this and also empathises with a similar situation of their own. None of it was your fault. Your parents shouldn't have allowed him to abuse you. He likely knew he could get away with doing whatever he wanted and took advantage. I grew up in a similar situation. My brother has paranoid schizophrenia. My mum babied the hell out of him, and he antagonised me and my sister a lot. She would not help us. Dad would say you have to make allowances, and Mum would say, I am Switzerland, meaning she didn't want to get involved with her grown-ass son harassing and antagonising little girls. I think she was actually entertained by it, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, it wasn't your fault. You actually didn't do anything wrong. How can you help but resent someone who abused you and then you had to care for them? Your feelings are totally normal. Your parents should have stepped up and put a stop to the abuse instead of saying he can't help it. He likely knew what he was doing and knew there would be no consequences, like my brother. This is your parents' fault, not yours. They probably know that deep down, and that's why they're shifting the blame onto you. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.